Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Sam's Doing Stuff. What am I doing today? Well, I'm going to get started finishing my basement. So first we're going to go for a little tour. We're going downstairs right now. You can see that the stairway down to the basement is already finished, so that's good. But once we get downstairs, let's just go through all the areas that I've got to work on, which is pretty much the entire basement. So over here, as you can see, we've got a bar set up. We've kind of staged this basement already with how we want it. We're going to use this for mainly entertaining. So we've got a bar area set up here. Haven't decided whether we want a wet bar or just leave it dry. Here's our utilities right here for furnace. Then you walk back into this hallway. I want to let you know there's a entrance egress to the garage, but this is all because we have septic and well. This is all of our water and electricity and everything. So this really should stay just utilities. We've got a lot of storage along this wall. That's an issue we want to solve. There's a lot of stuff just lying around, and you know, everything needs to have a place and everything needs to be in its place. So anyway, let's just follow along here if we can get around through all this stuff. Yeah, organization is a big deal. So right here, this is already plumbed for a bathroom. This chair right here would represent where the toilet is supposed to be. And you know, all the pipes are already down into the concrete, which is very nice. This is where a sink would be plumbed. And then this is plumbed with the intention of having a shower, but we don't want to put a full bath down here. So I'm thinking possibly a kitchenette with our second refrigerator here. These are all just kind of spitballing, brainstorming type things before we actually get into the work. So, and we got camera equipment sitting here. This big area here, this is seating and the largest entertainment area that's available. We got a pool table down here, and as you can see, it's plenty of room to have people over, and we'd like to be able to sit down and have a large screen TV on this wall. Now, these curtains here, we put up as just like a temporary wall, so to speak. I'm turning a little bit bright there. Turn that down a little. Okay, but behind it, and I'll take you around to show you, is storage. It's not great. Not great at all. So this is all just to block the ugliness of all that storage. If you come over here, this is where we came down the stairs. This is the other side of the stairway. This is where the storage area will begin. And back through here, it's just an absolute mess. Nothing is organized. It's all just on the floor, and it needs to be sorted through. It needs to be organized. It needs to have shelving. When I build this wall over here where that curtain is, we're going to put in metal shelving, and then hopefully all of those plastic shelves you saw that were back in the utility area are going to line this wall over here, get everything up off the floor, make it, you know, so you can find things, all the seasonal stuff, you know, just make it the way it should be. So that's pretty much it. That's the basic tour of the basement, the layout, if you will, and gives you an idea what we want to do with it. There's not a lot of sections, not a lot of things sectioned off. We got one room will be a bathroom, another room back here will be for utilities, and then the other room, like I said before, will be for the storage area, and the rest of it will be open. Now, I'm guessing a lot of you might have the same problem I have. And it'd be one thing if we were just moving in here and doing this before we moved in, but storage, it just overflows and becomes a problem. So the very first thing we need to do is to finish this storage room. But in order to do that, we're gonna have to clean this all out. So this whole storage area is pretty much just gonna vomit out into the open space and get this completely cleaned out so we're ready to start work. Much better. So now I've got my first work area completely ready to start working. I want to tell you right now, first of all, I am just a homeowner. I am not a licensed carpenter, electrician, plumber, any of those things. So as a word of encouragement, I'm doing things that just your average guy can do that I learned from my dad and from watching YouTube and other things. So just want to let you know that off the bat. This is for entertainment. This is not necessarily a how-to video, but if you pick up some tips and tricks along the way, great. So the next step is we're going to be applying dry lock. Dry lock is a thick paint, pretty much, that seals your masonry block. Creates just a rubber latex paint seal over the cinder block. Now this dry lock extreme that I'm using claims that it can withstand up to 15 pounds of hydrostatic pressure. And while that sounds like a lot, it really isn't. So if you have some kind of cracks or anything and there's a visible leak coming through your cinder block, you need to get that fixed properly before you do any of this work. You cannot just paint over it. So one final note, I am going to use a respirator, rubber gloves. I've got the windows open and I've got a fan causing some cross ventilation. You want to breathe as little of these fumes as possible. All right, we're done putting dry lock. Now, this section in here, once again, is just storage. I am not going to finish the walls. I'm not going to frame and drywall all of this in here. So, putting dry lock on the walls really makes it look a bit nicer. But also, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I'm not sponsored by everything in these videos has nothing to do with product endorsements or anything. I'm just telling you my experience. So there's a benefit to you watching this, not just for entertainment, but also I can give you my opinion on stuff. And for newer construction like this house is, I don't think this product is necessary. And here's why. So when moisture comes through, and yes, even in new construction like this, you're gonna get areas where moisture is gonna come through your concrete block. Nature just does it. It just concrete block or cinder block will wick some moisture. But what keeps it dry down here is the air. And if that moisture coming in through there meets air, it will dry up. So in new construction, putting a layer over top of the concrete block or the cinder block is not necessary. What I will end up doing is I'm just going to use a plastic sheeting to protect the wood, protect the studs, and to protect the insulation, and that's going to be plenty. It'll also, there'll be a little bit of space behind there, allow air to flow between the concrete block and the plastic sheeting, and that will be plenty to give a vapor barrier and a moisture barrier to keep the studs and the insulation from molding and rotting away. So that's what I'm going with for the rest of the basement, but it does look nice in here and I think it was still worthwhile. So let's move on to framing. So I've pushed you back a little bit. Now you can see this whole wall. This is the first wall we're going to build. Now I want to let you know there's been a lot of talk and a lot of planning and a lot of thinking and figuring behind the scenes that I'm not going to take you all through, but you'll see what I do as I do it. If you don't have the basic DIY skills, if you're not a DIYer, you really need to hire somebody to do this. But I already have all the tools and I already have done this before, so I know what I'm doing to a point, and I'm doing all the research just like you're doing, watching YouTube videos and stuff and learning new things. So let's just get started and I'll explain things as I go. Okay, so we're ready to start framing. We're going to start with our bottom plate, which of course is treated lumber because it's going directly against concrete. You want to use treated lumber on concrete so it doesn't have premature rot. And then the top plate and all the rest of the studs can just be standard lumber. So anyway, grab your tape measure. You lay your top plate and your bottom plate end to end perfectly. And then you're gonna lay your tape measure out from one end all the way to the other. And most tape measures have little red marks at 16 inches on center for every 16 inches. So you're going to start your first mark and you're going to mark it at 1.5 inches. That's where your first stud's going to go. And make an X on the side where the stud's going to go. Come to your next 16 inches. Now you want this to be on center, so you're going to go 3/4 of an inch both ways for your 1.5 inches, and then put an X in the middle. And then in order to get 16 inches on center from every mark, you're going to just go 3/4 of an inch forward and back, put an X in the middle, and that's where your stud goes. Now, when you get to 4 feet, that's important. That's where your drywall seam is going to hit. And that's why we are marking these 3/4 of an inches forward and back from this. So your seam for your drywall is going to hit there, and you want it to hit the center of the stud. So coming back 3/4 and ahead 3/4, and putting that stud right in the middle there ensures that your drywall is going to hit the center of that stud, so you have something for each seam, each edge to hit when you finish your drywall. And just keep doing that for every single one. All right, then on each section of the wall, once you've got your marks and your little X's, you're just going to transfer that across these two. That way, your top and bottom plate are going to be exactly the same, and you'll know that your studs are going to be plumb. All right, we got our framing for our wall all laid out, all lined up with all of our marks. Now this wall is not a full length wall, so we had to cut all of our studs down so we can make sure it's going to fit underneath that steel beam. All of that being done, we're ready to nail this together. So we got our studs lined up with our marks. I'm just using a nail gun, and if you're going to use a nail gun and do this, make sure you're holding your stud that you're going to nail into farther away than what your nail can reach, okay? It's very important. So anyway, we're going to hold our stud in place, get it just lined up, and now I want you guys to know one thing, okay? I'm doing this on a smooth concrete floor. So the face of my wall, the wall that's the side of the wall that's going to take the drywall, I'm pushing that down against that concrete, that flat concrete, so I know I'm going to have a nice flat surface on the other side of the wall to put my drywall on. Okay, we got our first section of wall all framed up, ready to go, but before we put it in place, we need to know where we're going to put it in place. So we're using a laser. Now the laser, I'm going to align with the top beam here, and it will show me exactly where the bottom of the wall is going to be in relation to the top, so that the wall is entirely perfectly plumb, okay? Now, when you get the laser exactly where you want it, you're going to want to take a black marker and make some marks along that laser so that you know exactly where to put the wall, because the laser might get bumped and get out of whack. So we're going to take a Sharpie and mark where the laser is. All right, now that we've got marks, we know where we're going to put this, we're going to set our wall up in place. All right, that took some doing. But now, even though we know, because of our marks, we should be right, we're going to double check this, of course, and that is dead on. That is perfect. So, you know, check in a couple places, make sure right in between the lines. Yep. All right, well now everything is plumb. This wall is exactly where it needs to be. We're gonna attach it in place. So we're gonna attach the top first, and yes, we're going into a steel beam. So we're gonna drill through the top plate and then through the steel beam. Yes, that's okay. We're not gonna perforate it. We're only putting 2 of these number 14 2.5-inch lag screws. They're self-tapping, but we're still gonna pre-drill them. Anyway, once we get those up in place, this sucker's not moving, so let's do it. Well, we got that done. Now let's put the lag screw in. That's not going anywhere. Okay, we got the top in place. Now we need to get the bottom in place. So we're going to take our level, we're going to double check and make sure we are still plumb, because we can still adjust it from here. We're not fully committed yet, but we're good. This wall is perfectly plumb. So now we're using into the concrete floor tap cons, okay? And I'm just gonna use 3 down here. Why am I using 3? Well, 1 at either end and 1 in the middle. The bottom of the wall has a greater chance of getting kicked out of place. But really, once this goes down through the bottom plate and into the concrete, nothing's pushing it from side to side. Now when you drill for tap cons, they include a bit usually with the tap cons. Do not clean the dust out of the hole. Just drill it and then drive the tap con. The dust actually helps to hold it in place. I'm also using what's called a hammer drill. You're not going into concrete without a hammer drill. All right, so we have quite literally turned a corner here and we are done with our long wall. Now, once again, this isn't a how-to video, but I'm gonna give you little tips and tricks along the way. The most important part of your wall is A, you want your drywall to be nice and flat and smooth, so they all have to be plumb and straight in line with each other, everything's square. And number 2, you wanna make sure that they are 16 inches apart. You can do 24 inches also, but the most important thing is that those seams for the drywall are gonna meet in the center of a 2x4 stud, so you have something to attach it to. Every step in framing and building and finishing a basement or any project is the first step reflects on the next step, which reflects on the next step. If your framing is screwed up, then your drywall will be screwed up, which will make it more difficult to put mud on. And if your mud is screwed up, then it'll show in your paint and it'll all be screwed up. So, you know, this is important. So, all right, next we're gonna go on to the door. This is a standard pre-hung 30-inch door, and they come in all different widths, 28, 30, 32, 36. 30-inch was just about right for this opening. It's a closet door. You're not putting a lot of stuff like this storage area. We're gonna put a full 36-inch door in because you wanna be able to get big boxes of stuff in and out. This is a small broom closet type of a deal. So 30 inches fits the space just fine. We wanna center it. It's a left swing, so it comes out this way. You can't swing it in underneath the stairway. It'll hit the stairway. That's important. All of this stuff you have to think about. And how do you determine whether it's a left or right swing door? Well, you stand and swing your arm. I'm swinging my left arm. That's a left swing. I'm swinging my right arm. That's a left swing, or right swing. So, but what if I'm facing the door and it swings towards me? Well, turn around. If it swings this way, it's a left swing. If it swings this way, it's a right swing. It's that simple. So anyway, we're gonna get started and get this thing framed in. Okay, so laying out a door frame, you got your top plate and your bottom plate just like you would in a wall. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find the center of my doorway. I want this door to be centered. Mark my center, and I'm gonna transfer that line across both. I'm gonna double check that. You go 20 1/4 that way, and then turn your tape measure around, it's 20 1/4 that way. It's a good way to double check center. All right, now we got our center, and we know it's a 30-inch door. When you do a door frame, you're gonna do 2 inches wider and 2.5 inches taller. So let's just start with the width. 30 inches divided in half is 15 plus 1 in order to get 2 inches wider. So 16 inches from each side of that center. Once again, I'm going to double check that my measurements combined are 32. Transfer those lines. Okay, so what we've just marked is the rough opening of our door. Our 30-inch door is going to be a rough opening of 32 inches. The next stud, or the first stud that goes on the outside of that, is going to be our jack stud. So now I'm going to measure over 1.5 inches. Now we've got our jack stud marked. Now we would mark these with an X to know where the stud is, but I'm going to mark this one with a J. I like to do that because I like to remember that's my jack stud. Those are the different studs. They're going to be shorter than the other studs. The rest of these studs are going to be full length. Now I've got an interesting situation here. At the ends of my boards, I don't have 3 inches left in order to put king stud and then another stud next to the wall. So I'm just going to go with the king stud. The king stud needs to be next to the jack stud to support the door, but you don't necessarily need another stud on the end. As long as you have something to hit the drywall, you'll be fine. So we're all laid out. Jack studs, king studs, and normal studs. Some key things before I nail all this together. I want to double check and make sure I've got 32 inches in between my jack studs, and I do. So I know I got that right. At least I got one thing right. And then another thing you want to double check, if you've got bends in your boards, which of course you're going to have bends in, box store 2x4s, make those bends go together like this, okay? See what I'm doing here? If they bend, put them together like that, so then when you put them together, they can squeeze together. If you have one bending this way and the other one bending this way, and you put them, they're always going to be bent and they're always going to be messed up. So that way your 2x4s can squeeze together and they'll be straight. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tack this in on the bottom. Okay, the frame is done. Got it together. Well, it's almost done. I've got to attach the jack studs to the king studs. Now, you're going to see people do things differently. They're watching different videos. And if I do it differently than someone else, I'm going to tell you why I do it differently. A lot of guys will just nail this all together with their, nail gun. But I prefer to screw my jack studs into my king studs. And the reason for that is it's a stronger hold. And if you've ever had a door that jams after a while, especially in a basement where the humidity is going to change, it's going to get cold and warm and all kinds of stuff. I don't want these door frames to get messed up. So screws are going to hold them a lot better. It also takes that wood that I told you before that may be crooked, well, definitely is going to be crooked, and it forces it into a straight line. So it takes those two crooked boards and squishes them together way better than what nails would. And if that board continues to bend, it's going to pull that nail right out. So, screws. I got to get it into there somehow. Oh! Shit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I screwed up. The space between the beam and the existing framing is narrower than the space for the bottom plate. Yeah. So here's Carpentry 101, another lesson. A great carpenter is not someone who never makes mistakes. A great carpenter is someone who knows how to correct their mistakes and cover them up. So, it's time to do that. Okay, let's gotta go by that. Yep. Look at that. Look at that. That is a beautiful thing. And just for S&Gs, I went ahead and stuck the door in there. It's got the cardboard on the sides and everything, so it just kind of fits, which is nice, it fits. So doors don't get put in until after the drywall is done. So I'll pop that out and we're gonna move on to the next. So here is the next and the last piece of framing to be done for this section. This is going to be the main entrance for the storage area. So I've got a 36-inch wide door to go here. It's exactly the same procedure. Bottom plate, jack studs, king studs, and all the rest of the studs, header, you know, just like I did over there, just a bigger space. So I'm just gonna get it done. And there you have it. Framing for a 36-inch door. Done. And like I said, that is the last of the framing for right now. Just a quick recap as to why I'm doing this way. So this is going to be, imagine open the door, and this is the storage area. It's a rather large storage area. There's going to be shelving along this wall. This is where my wife likes to hang her wreaths, seasonal wreaths. We'll have tall storage here, there'll be space on the floor, and then a whole bunch of plastic shelving over here, and just oodles of room for all the stuff. And all the stuff is right here. You know, not only all of this stuff, which needs to be sorted through, but all of this stuff back here, the seasonal Christmas and Halloween decorations and stuff, that all, it's too much stuff really, but all of that needs to go back in there and be out of the way so I can finish the rest of the basement. Yeah. So that's where we are. So what's next? All right, we got all the framing done for this room, and now it's time for electrical. And before I do electrical, I need to clean everything up. I think it's very important at each stage to stop, reorganize your tools, put everything back where it belongs, sweep. All right, everything is cleaned up, tools are reorganized. That's an important step. I hate working in a mess. Anyway, let's talk about some key takeaways of this video. Number one, let's talk about that dry lock, okay? I'm sure the product does what it's intended to do and it works just fine, but for me, I didn't feel like it did enough. I am gonna go back to what I used to do and put plastic sheeting behind the studs and the insulation. I just have had really good luck with that. If you're gonna do this, make sure you check your own local codes and everything, but with the construction of this house, it was waterproof properly. This basement was intended to be finished, so I feel really good just putting the plastic sheeting behind, and that's what I'm going with. So anyway, that's number one. Number two, the framing is turning out beautifully. It is so important to be a perfectionist and get that exactly the way it's supposed to be, because every step after that is going to show. From the ceiling to the floor, everything has to be planned out. You really have to do a lot of thinking. There's a lot of behind the scenes you're not seeing here. And if you're not, like I said earlier in the video, if you're not comfortable with DIY stuff like this, just hire a professional. But if you are, if you know what you're doing, then, you know, hopefully you pick up some tips and tricks along the way here, or if it's just a refresher for you, or if it's just fun to watch somebody else do it. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, hit that thumb button? Yeah, the one that says thumb. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're gonna go on to electrical and drywall next. And boy, once you start putting drywall up, things really start coming together. So I appreciate you stopping by, and I'll see you next time when I'm doing more stuff.